Good morning, everyone. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Good morning.
All glories to Śrīla Prabhupāda. All glories to the Sankirtan movement of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And welcome all the members of the Prabhupada Disciples Association globally who are attending these Zoom classes on a regular basis. And we have over 80 classes now on the Prabhupada Disciples channel. And so there's lots of opportunity for people to tune in to these classes at their convenience and review them. Like yesterday's class was very enlivening for our group. The class went on for 2.5 hours. And because people were so eager to ask questions and discuss philosophy. And as a result, over 28 people stayed on the class till 12:30 yesterday morning or in the afternoon. So we did discuss the length of the classes with our media team. We have a media team that meets once a week to discuss the Zoom meetings. And we asked the question, and was it how they enjoyed the classes? And everyone seemed to, for the time being, appreciate that it was an open forum for people to bring forward their questions and get the answers that they're looking for in terms of their own personal spiritual life. And that is really what life is about. Prabhupada talks about it in the Bhagavatam, questions and answers. That everyone is asking questions and everyone is looking for answers. And with the Prabhupada Disciples group, we try to give the best answers based on our understanding of Prabhupada's instructions, which our membership has, many of the members have studied in detail and therefore are equipped to give the proper answers in terms of the use of books that are not adulterated or changed, and in terms of initiation ceremonies and association with other groups that Prabhupada had cautioned us to avoid. So we'll start in. We've been reading from the Jaladutta diary. Here it is, here again. And it's been a very engaging diary. It's almost sad that we're getting to the end of this, but we do have a copy of the further diary of Prabhupada when he was in New York City. In the beginning, it's called, and we are going to carry on with this part of the historical references to Prabhupada's work, how he was managing himself on his journey of devotional service to Lord Chaitanya and his guru Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, which was the motivation behind his work. So we just finished reading the Sikshastakam prayers, and this is from a publication called India's Message of Peace and Goodwill. So it was Śrīla Prabhupāda's pamphlet for the spreading of Lord Krishna's teachings. And it was carried by the, Prabhupada did mention the Scindia Steamship Company as an appreciation of their providing passage for him on the Jaladuta ship to come to America from Calcutta. And he arrived in America in New York City on September 19th, 1965. At the time when not only the people of India, but those of the West need the chastening quality of love and truth in a corrupting atmosphere of hate and hypocrisy, a work like this will have uplifting and corrective influence. So he's referring here just back to his planned translation with extensive purports of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. What is God? He is truth. He is love. Even an atheist must accept the supremacy of those qualities and how much they are needed by the people of the world who have been taught to deny God, and these qualities do not require much emphasis. The author has attempted a tremendous task. So Prabhupada's speaking as in the third person.
Prabhu, actually, if you scroll up here, these are
please.
actually appreciations of the publication
Oh,
from
okay.
different people. So
Thank
they're
you.
kind of like, yeah.
Doesn't who is the person?
That's not mentioned, but here you see.
Oh, so
chanting
it's somebody.
of the holy name. Those who are
I got
scholars,
it.
philosophers, scientists, religionists may read the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam with particular attention. They have appreciated the publication as follows. So they're just various scholars,
Oh,
philosophers,
okay.
scientists.
I
like that.
misunderstood that. I was thinking he was speaking in the third person. The author has attempted a tremendous task. A pursual will give us in the sample measure a knowledge of the original. The essence of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is the exposition of the absolute truth. We would recommend this book. I see, yes. The editor's vast and deep study of the subject and critical insight are reflected in these notes, and we have no doubt that with the publication of these volumes, the rightful interpretation of the Bhagavatam, which has been the gift of Sri Chaitanya and his Goswami followers, has now been available to the English knowing world for the first time. So they're all quotes. The elaborate method is very helpful to the ardent student of the Bhagavatam who lack in Sanskrit knowledge. It is admitted in all hands that Bhagavatam is the most difficult text amongst the Puranas. The author richly deserves the gratitude of the devotees for his previous learned labor of love. These volumes speak very highly of Swamiji's scholarship and especially of his love of cultural pursuits, which we look into when we look into the enormous labor and sacrifice in producing them single-handed, and that too at a ripe old age of 68. We earnestly pray to the Almighty that he may spare Swamiji for all the years, and he may require to finish the magnum opus of 60 volumes and earn the love and gratitude of his fellow men in pursuit of divine love and grace, nay, of the entire humanity. You have done a first-class work, and you deserve the hearty recommendations of every Indian Hindu. Your deep and penetrating study of the subject and your philosophical insight are reflected in this book. So, okay, that's correct. So these are acknowledgments of a pamphlet that Prabhupada had put out describing his efforts in terms of how he had already started the Bhagavatam, which we'll be reading this morning from the first, the 1962 Bhagavatam, and then moving forward his plans to complete the entire work, which he did in a spectacular fashion with his disciples in the ISKCON movement. Now we're going to move forward. Do we have a reading today, Vinkat, prepared?
Yes, Prabhu. We can read from the Back to Godhead, first article of the Back to Godhead, which was published in 1944, the first issue of Back to Godhead. And the first
Okay,
article from
perfect.
that.
And here we get a chance to, again, see the depth of Śrīla Prabhupāda's understanding of the mission of Lord Chaitanya and his efforts to present it to the world. So go ahead, Vinkat, please.
Yeah, this is just the, just wanted to show you, this is the front cover of that. This was published in 1944. So we can see how nicely it was laid out and everything. And this is the article, Message of His Divine Grace, referring to Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur.
Okay.
And yeah, I'll read it from just for easier reading, I'll read it from a website.
Thank you.
Message of His Divine Grace. His Divine Grace Sri Śrīmad-Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj, the celebrated Acharya, spiritual head of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas, spoke the following few lines as his message just a few days, 23rd December 1936, before his passing away from this mortal world. I have most probably given many people troubles in the mind. Some of them might have thought about me that I am their enemy because I was obliged to speak the plain truth for service and devotion towards the absolute Godhead. I've given them all those troubles only for the reason that they may turn their face towards the personality of Godhead without any desire for gain and with unalloyed devotion. I hope someday or other they may understand me rightly. I advise all to preach the teachings of Rupa Raghunath, disciples of Lord Chaitanya, with all energy and resources. Our ultimate goal shall be to become the dust of the lotus feet of Sri Rupa and Raghunath Goswamis. You should all work conjointly under the guidance of your spiritual master with a view to serve the absolute knowledge, the personality of Godhead. You should live somehow or other without any quarrel in this mortal world, only for the service of Godhead. Do not please give up the service of Godhead in spite of all dangers, all criticisms, and all discomforts. Do not be disappointed, for most people in the world do not serve the personality of Godhead. Do not give up your own service, which is your everything and all. Neither reject the process of chanting and hearing of the transcendental holy name of Godhead. You should always chant the transcendental name of Godhead with patience and forbearance like a tree and humbleness like a straw. We wish that this mass of our body of flesh and blood may be sacrificed at the altar of preaching the Sankirtan movement, congregation and chanting of the holy name of Godhead, propagated by Lord Chaitanya. We're not desirous of becoming a hero of work or a reformer of religion, but our reality may be identified with the dust of the lotus feet of Sri Rupa and Raghunath, for that is our everything. The flow of the transcendental tide of the attraction of devotion will never be blocked, and you, with all your all energy, shall devote yourself for fulfilling the desire of Srila Bhaktivedanta Thakur. There are many amongst you who are well qualified and able workers. We have no other desire whatsoever. There are certainly many difficulties while we are in this mortal world, but it is not our business simply to be overwhelmed with those difficulties or to try to overcome them only. We must know, even during the duration of our present life, as to what we shall gain after overcoming all those difficulties of life, and what shall be the mode of our permanent existence. We must make an adjustment of all things that evoke our love and hatred, and for those that we want and do not want. Attachment and detachment of this mortal world will engage us more and more as we become farther and farthest from the lotus feet of Sri Krishna. When we're able to transcend the position of attachments and detachments of this mortal world and be attracted with the holy name of Godhead, it is then only we can understand the import of the transcendental service of Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. At the first instance, the subject Krishna is startling and perplexing to us. Everyone who is called by the name man is more or less struggling, knowingly or unknowingly, to eliminate those invading elements what are baffling our conception of eternal need. It is our only duty to enter into the kingdom of eternal need. We have no love or hatred for anyone in this world. All arrangements made in this world are but temporary. There is therefore unavoidable necessity for that ultimate need for everyone in this world. You should attain the transcendental loving service of the objective, being situated in concerted action for that one aim. Let there be a constant flow of the ideas and thoughts as conceived by Rupa Goswami and his followers. We shall not at any time show our slightest dejection for the seven-tongued Sankirtan movement. If we have undaunted faith in it, we shall then only achieve all perfections. We should all therefore preach with fearlessness and with utmost energy the message of Rupa and Raghunath under the guidance of the followers of Sri Rupa. Translated from Bengali by the editor. You're on mute, Prabhu. Let me unmute. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. Very inspiring reading from Bhaktisiddhanta's writings for all of us, very profound, and really represents the mission of the Prabhupada Disciples Association and the situation that we're currently in here in this age of quarrel and hypocrisy, 2023. We'll move forward now with the chanting of Jaya Radha Madhava with Śrīla Prabhupāda leading us. Everyone please chant along, and then we'll have Yaśodā-nandana Prabhu in California speak on the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam from the 1962 edition. Hare Krishna.
Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Yaśodā-nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yaśodā-nandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Banachari Jamuna Tira Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yaśodā-nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yaśodā-nandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Banachari Jamuna Tira Banachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Amuspa Paramahansa Parivrajaga-ācārya Sri Small Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava ki Jai, Nāma-ācārya Sri Haridas Thakur ki Jai, Prem se Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaur Bhaktamani ki Jai, Sri Sri Radha Krishna Mokh Bhagavanath Sam Khanda Radha Khanda Giri Govardhan ki Jai, Vrindavan Dham ki Jai, Navadvip Dham ki Jai, Ganga Mai ki Jai, Jamuna Mai ki Jai, Dwarka Dham ki Jai, Swami Bhaktivedanta ki Jai. All glories to their Summit. All glories to their Summit. Thank you very much.
All glories to you, Śrīla Prabhupāda. All glories to you, Prabhupada.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya. Narayanam Namaskritya. Naram Cheva Narottamam. Naram Cheva Narottamam. Devim Saraswatim Vyasam. Devim Saraswatim Vyasam. Tato Jayam Mudirayat. Tato Jayam Mudirayat. One should utter the means of conquest, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, after offering respectful obeisances, 1, to the personality of Godhead Narayana, 2, to the Narayana Rishi, who is the supermost human being, 3, to the Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, then 4, to Śrīla Vyasadeva, the author. Reading from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 2, text number 17. Srinvatam svakata Krishna punya shravana kirtanaha ridyantasto yabhadrani vidhunoti surit satam. Translation. Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is also the Paramatma in everyone's heart and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, does cleanse the desire for material enjoyment in the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge for hearing his, Krishna's, messages, which are themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. Text 18. Nashta prayeshu abhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naistiki. By regular attendance in the Bhagavatam class or rendering service unto the pure devotees, all that is inauspicious in the heart of a candidate becomes destroyed almost to nil, and thus loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, comes into being an irrevocable fact. So welcome everyone to this class on Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Today we'll be reading from Canto 1, Chapter 2, text number 11. We are reading from the 1962 original edition. All English synonyms, translations, and purports by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupāda, Founder-Ācārya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, also known as the Krishna Consciousness Movement. We are on page 144. Vadanti tat tatvadidas tattvam yajnanam advayam Brahmeti Paramatmeti Bhagavaniti Shabdyati Vadanti, they say, Tat, that, Tattvavida, the learned souls, Tattvam, the absolute truth, Yad, which, Jnanam, knowledge, Advayam, non-dual, Brahmeti, called by the name of Brahman, Paramatma iti, called by the name of Paramatma, Bhagavan iti, called by the name of Bhagavan, Shabdyati, it is so sounded. Translation by Śrīla Prabhupāda. Learned transcendentalists who know the absolute truth call the non-dual substance as absolute, who is known as Brahman, Paramatma, or Bhagavan. Purport by His Divine Grace, Śrīla Prabhupāda. The absolute truth is both subject and object, and there is no qualitative difference there. Therefore, Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan are qualitatively one and the same. The same substance is realized as impersonal Brahman by the students of Upanishads, as localized Paramatma by the Hiranyagarbhas or the yogis, and as Bhagavan by the devotees. In other words, Bhagavan, or the personality of Godhead, is the last word of the absolute truth. Paramatma is partial representation of the personality of Godhead. An impersonal Brahman is the glowing effulgence of the personality of Godhead, as the sun rays are to the sun god. Less intelligent student of either of the above schools sometimes urges in favor of his own respective realization, but those who are perfect seers of the absolute truth know it well that the above three features of the one absolute truth are different perspective view of the seer from different angles of vision. As it is explained in the first sloka of the first chapter of the Bhagavatam, the supreme truth is self-sufficient, cognizant, and free from the illusion of relativity. In the relative world, the knower is different from the known, but in the absolute truth, both the knower and the known are the one and the same thing. In the relative world, the knower is the living spirit or superior quality of energy, whereas the known is inert matter or inferior quality of energy. Therefore, there is a duality of inferior and superior quality of energy, whereas in the absolute realm, both the knower and the known are of the same superior quality energy. There are three kinds of energies of the supreme energetic. There is no difference between the energy and the energetic, but there is difference of quality in the matter of energies. The absolute realm and the living entities are of the same superior quality of energy, but the material world is of inferior quality of energy. The living being in contact with the inferior quality of energy is illusioned as belonging to the inferior quality of energy, and therefore there is a sense of relativity in the material world. In the absolute, there is no such sense of difference between the knower and the known, and therefore everything there is absolute. Text number 12. Tatshraddadana munayo jnana vairagya yuktaya pashyanti atmani chekatmanam bhakya shruta grihitaya. Tat, that Shraddha-dhana, seriously inquisitive. Munaya, sages. Jnana, knowledge. Vairagya, detachment. Yuktaya, well equipped with. Pashyanti, see. Atmani, within himself. Atmanam, the Paramatma. Bhaktya, in devotional service. Shruta, the Vedas. Grihitaya, well received. That translation by Śrīla Prabhupāda. That absolute truth is realized by the seriously inquisitive student or sages, well equipped with knowledge and detachment by performance of devotional service in terms of hearing the Vedanta Shruti. Purport by His Divine Grace Śrīla Prabhupāda. The absolute truth is realized in full by the process of devotional service of the Lord Vasudeva, or the personality of Godhead, who is full-fledged absolute truth. Brahman is his transcendental bodily effulgence, and Paramatma is his partial representation. As such, Brahman or Paramatma realization of the absolute truth is partial realization of the absolute truth. There are 4 different types of living beings. They are 1, the karmis, 2, the jnanis, 3, the yogis, and 4, the devotees. The karmis are materialistic, whereas the other 3 are transcendentalists. First-class transcendentalists are the devotees who have realized the Supreme Person. Second-class transcendentalists are those who have partially relished the plenary portion of the Absolute Truth. And the third-class transcendentalists are those who have barely realized the spiritual focus of the Absolute Person. As stated in the Bhagavad Gita and other Vedic literature, the Supreme Person is realized by devotional service, which is backed by full knowledge and detachment from the material association. We have already discussed the point that devotional service is followed by knowledge and detachment of material association. As Brahman and Paramatma realization is imperfect realization of the Absolute Truth, so the means of realizing Brahman and Paramatma, in other words, the path of jnana and yoga, are also imperfect means of realizing the Absolute Truth. Devotional service, which is based on the foreground of full knowledge, combined with detachment of the material association, fixed up on the oral reception of the Vedanta Shruti, is the only perfect method of realizing the Absolute Truth by the seriously inquisitive student. Devotional service is not, therefore, meant for the less intelligent class of transcendentalists. There are 3 classes of devotees, namely first, second, and third class. The third-class devotees are the neophytes who have no knowledge, neither detachment from the material association, but are simply attracted with the preliminary processes of worshiping the deity in the temple, are called material devotees. Material devotees are more attached to material benefit than transcendental profit. Therefore, one has to make definite progress from the position of material devotional service to the second class of devotional position. In the second class position, the devotee can see 4 principles in the devotional line, namely, the personality of Godhead, his devotees, the ignorant, and the envious. One has to raise himself at least to the stage of a second-class devotee and thus become eligible to know the Absolute Truth. A third-class devotee, therefore, has to receive the instructions of devotional service from authoritative sources of Bhagavat. Number one Bhagavat is the established personality of devotee, and the other Bhagavat is the message of Godhead. The third-class devotee has therefore to go to the personality of devotee in order to learn the instructions of devotional service. Such personality of devotee is not a professional man who earns his livelihood in the business of Bhagavat. Such devotee must be a representative of Shukadev Goswami, like Sutta Goswami, and must preach the cult of devotional service for all-around benefit of all people. A neophyte devotee has very little taste for hearing from the authorities. Such neophyte devotee makes show of hearing from the professional man and dictates to the professional man to satisfy his senses. This sort of hearing and chanting has spoiled the whole thing, and one should be very much careful about the faulty process. The holy messages of Godhead, as they are inculcated in the Bhagavad Gita or in the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, are undoubtedly transcendental subjects, but even though they are so, such transcendental matters are not to be received from the professional man who spoils it, spoils the whole thing like the serpent spoils the milk, simply by touch with the tongue. A sincere devotee must therefore be prepared to hear the Vedic literature like the Upanishad, Vedanta, and other literatures left by the previous authorities or Goswamis for the benefit of his progress. Without hearing such literatures, nobody can make actual progress. And without hearing and following the instructions, the show of devotional service becomes an anachronism and therefore a sort of disturbance in the path of devotional service. Unless, therefore, devotional service is not established on the principles of Shruti, Smriti, Puranam, Pancharatra authorities, the make show of devotional service should at once be rejected, and an unauthorized devotee should never be recognized as pure devotee. By assimilation of such messages from the Vedic literatures, one can see the all-pervading localized aspect of the personality of Godhead within his own self constantly. This is called samadhi. Om ajnanatimirandasya jnananjana shalakaya chakshurunmilitam yena tasmai Shri Gurave namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashatya Deshatarine Bhakti Siddhanta Shishyaya Bhaktivedanta Namine Prasannaya Prasantaya Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Bhagavad Vandanam Kadyam Guru Vandana Purvakam Kshiram Sharkara Yuktam Kadati Hi Visheshataha Adadana Strinam Danter Idam Yachi Punah Punah Srimad Rupa Padam Bhoja Durishyam Janma Janmani Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Sri Rup Sanatana Bhatta Raghunatha Sri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghunatha. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. I offer my respectful obeisances. We all offer our respectful obeisances unto our spiritual master, Śrīla Prabhupāda, who has opened my eyes, who has opened our eyes from the darkness of ignorance with the torchlight of transcendental knowledge. So here in these two texts, there's some very important points which are being raised. We have read in the Wednesday night discussions by Krishna Das Kaviraj when we read the Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, this exact verse, Vadanti tat tattvavidas tattvam yad jnanam advayam. How to understand the absolute truth. Different religionists, philosophers, academic professors from different religious disciplines or religious faiths for time immemorial have discussed what is the absolute truth, what is God, who is God. But here in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, it is very nicely and very clearly defined. Brahmeti Paramatmeti Bhagavaniti Shabdyate. We read in the Bhagavad Gita, Sarvasya Chaham Riddhi Sannivishtaha. Krishna explains, I'm in the heart of every living entity. This is a very important point. Because as we will see in the studies of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam and Bhagavad Gita, there are different levels of realization. There's the level of realization of the Jnanis or the impersonalists. There's the level of realization of the yogis who realize the Paramatma feature. And there's the level of realization, the ultimate realization of the devotees who realize Bhagavan, the personality of God in himself. Now here it is clearly explained that learned transcendentalists who know the absolute truth call the non-dual substance as absolute, who is known as Brahman, Paramatma, or Bhagavan. Of course, this is not a subject matter for materialistic persons. This is not easy to understand for those who are not familiar with the message of Bhagavad Gita, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. We just discussed yesterday morning in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, text 28-29, Yesham tvantagatam papam jananam punyakarmanam. That for those who have eradicated all sinful activities, they can start to understand the absolute truth. They can start. That's why when we analyze what Śrīla Prabhupada did in his preaching technique, he requested people to first stop these four sinful activities. What is that? Meat eating, flesh eating, gambling, mental speculation, illicit sex life. These various sinful activities are very detrimental for someone who is engaged in the path of spiritual realization. First, one has to stop all that. One has to regulate his life in such a way by the chanting of Hare Krishna, by offering foodstuffs to Lord Krishna, bhoga, that becomes prasadam, by engaging in studying the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, by associating with devotees, worshipping Tulsi, Guru Puja, and more important, chanting Hare Krishna. Of all these activities, the chanting of Hare Krishna is the most important. Kali Yuga Yuga Dharma Namer Prachar Tatilagi Pitavarna Chaitanya Avatar. We have often discussed this particular verse cited by Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Kali Yuga Yuga Dharma. That the religion, the authorized method of religion for this age, Namer Prachar, is the chanting of Hare Krishna and the preaching of the chanting of Hare Krishna. Then somebody will say, well, how do we do that? Where is the example of a person who did that? Tatilagi Pitavarna Chaitanya Avatar. As such, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has appeared, Pita Varna, in a golden color, yellow color, in this age of Kali Yuga to demonstrate how to practically chant this Maha Mantra. Because we see in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, it is described that in previous ages, people used to have a very different method of spiritual realization. In Satya Yuga, people used to live for 100,000 years. So the method of self-realization was be this process of meditation, dhyana yoga. Kriteya dhyayato vishnum tretayam yajato makei. In the Treta Yuga, the method would be these very elaborate fire sacrifices, yajna. But in this age of Kali, Śrīla Prabhupāda explained, where do we find the qualified Brahmins who simply by chanting Vedic mantras can give life to an animal? That is no longer there. Kritayadhyayato Vishnum Tretayam Yajato Mage Dwapare Paricharyayam. I do not know if some of you have been in India. Our friend Goramani in Mayapur, he's there in India. There's some other, like we have our friend Ratiyatra Prabhu, also in India. There are devotees there who are familiar. Some of these deities, especially in South India, they are from previous yugas. Yeah, in Tirupati, there's a deity of Balaji. That is from the previous yuga. In Chennai or in Madras, there's a deity of Parthasarathi. It's a big deity. It's almost 10 foot tall, of Krishna and Arjuna. That is also from the previous yuga. Some of you who may have been to Sri Rangam or may have heard about that deity of Ranganath, that is from the time of Lord Ramachandra. So that in previous yuga, Dwapare Paricharyaya, and in Dwapara Yuga, prior to Kali Yuga, there was very elaborate deity worship. Very elaborate deity worship. And what about this age is simply Kalo Tadhari Kirtanat. In the Vishnu Purana, it is described, Yadapnoti Tadapnoti Kalo Samkirtya Keshavam, that whatever was achieved in Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, can easily be achieved in this age by the Samkirtan praising Lord Keshava. So that is a special benediction. We see in the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam that although the age of Kali Yuga, it is an ocean of faults. Very difficult. On the slightest provocation, there will be discord, there will be fighting, accusations, so many problems in Kali Yuga. Astiyako Mahanguna, but there is one great qualification in this age. What is that? Kirtanadeva Krishnasya Mukta Sangha Param Rajet. That simply by chanting the name of Krishna even once, one can immediately become liberated. That is the special benediction of Lord Krishna, and demonstrated by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and perfectly applied by his pure devotee, the empowered Acharya Śrīla Prabhupāda. Now the problem comes, this text number 12, we see in the purport, Śrīla Prabhupada explains about some professional worshippers. In the next to last paragraph, Prabhupada says, a neophyte devotee has very little taste for hearing from the authorities. Such neophyte devotee makes show of hearing from the professional man and dictates to the professional man to satisfy his senses. This sort of hearing and chanting has spoiled the whole thing, and one should be very much careful about the faulty process. So this is very important, because we know in India they have this practice of this reciting the entire Bhagavatam within 7 days. They will take an entire week and recite the entire Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. But Śrīla Prabhupada has criticized this method because many of the reciters and many of the audience are not qualified. It is not a professional business for money making. this professional business has spoiled so many people. In 1972, we had the chance to go to a place in India called Ranchi in Bihar. Ranchi is a place where Tata, one of the richest industrialists in India, he built some very big steel mills, very, very big steel mills. So it's an industrial city. And one gentleman who was hosting us, he had provided us nice accommodation. He told us that they were going to have a Rasa Leela dance. And he said, Swamiji, why don't you come and participate in the Rasa Leela dance? There'll be many young girls, you can dance with any one of them. And we explained to him that this is not the proper process. You cannot understand Rasa Leela by simply this kind of dancing. This is not the system. And we quoted him that verse on Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Srinvatam Svakata Krishna, Nashta Prayesha Babadusha. There is a process of understanding the Bhagavatam, the literature which describes this Rasa Leela, the intimate pastimes of Lord Krishna with the gopis. It is not simply that you pick up some young girl and start dancing and you're thinking you will understand Rasa Leela. This is nonsense. That's why we see in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the Nectar of Devotion, Prabhupada has often quoted that verse, Shruti Smriti Puranadi Panchanatara Vidim Vina, Ekantikiri Harer Bhaktir Utpatayeva Kalpate. Prabhupada translates this. He says, unless therefore devotional service is not established on this principle of Shruti, Smriti, Puranam, Panchamatra authorities, the make show of devotional service should at once be rejected, and an unauthorized devotee should never be recognized as pure devotee. Now the question is, somebody may say, well, we've gone to the Shastra, we've gone to the various Vedic literatures, and we're basically absorbed in discussing Krishna with the gopis. This is the process. But the process given by Rupa Goswami is you have to hear from the proper authorities. If one hears from a non-Vaishnava or a deviated Vaishnava, then it will have an adverse effect. Avaishnava Mukhodgirnam Putam Hari Katamritam. Sanatan Goswami in the Hari Bhakti Vilas explains that hearing topics about Krishna, Katamritam, it is very nectarian, it is very sweet. But if you hear that same topic from a non-Vaishnava, from a non-devotee, it will have a contradictory effect. Shravanam neva kartavyam sarpochistam yatapaya. Just like if you have milk, milk is very nutritious. It is very, very healthy for the human body. But if that same milk has been touched by the lips of a serpent, it becomes poisonous. So that same Harikatha, the discussions about Lord Krishna, which are very sweet, very nectarian, and very pleasant, and very beneficial, if you hear from a non-devotee, a Vaishnava Mukhodgirnam, then the effect will be different. That is why it is recommended to hear from a fully realized pure devotee. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was in Jagannath Puri, one poet came to present his poetry to Lord Chaitanya. And nobody could approach Lord Chaitanya directly. They had to submit the poetry to Swarup Damodar, the personal secretary, an exalted devotee who was assisting Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Swarup Damodar heard that poetry and he told him, Bhagavat Paragiya Bhagavatastane. In order to discuss about Bhagavatam and write poetry about Bhagavan, you have to take shelter of a Bhagavat devotee. And this is the greatest kindness, the greatest mercy of Śrīla Prabhupāda. Just like we've been reading, Bhaktivedanta Prabhu and Vishwakarma Prabhu have been reading these readings from Śrīla Prabhupāda in the 1950s. Prabhupada's writings when he was in India. And if you noticed, The same points that he is making in 1945 or 1950 are the same point you see throughout his books. It's the same points that he started his society. There's no change. Conditioned souls love to change everything. Let me tell you a little story. In 1977 in Vrindavan, Śrīla Prabhupada requested one devotee to go to Mathura. Mathura is like 20 minutes from Vrindavan, half hour. Says, you go to this pharmacy, you get this medicine, you pay this much and bring it back. So the devotee went to Mathura, he got the wrong medicine at the wrong price at the wrong pharmacy, and he brought it back to Śrīla Prabhupada. And Prabhupada told him, why didn't you not follow my instruction? I told you to get this medicine for this price at this place. Prabhupada, this is the problem with you Westerners. You're always changing. Always changing. This Prabhupada called it the Western disease. Great liberated souls do not like to change. They follow the immutable instruction. And this is our task. This is our duty as devotees and aspiring devotees. Simply to follow in the footsteps of the great Acharya, follow the instruction. No need to change and concoct different things. So I'll shut up for now and let some more experienced devotees speak. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much. Brilliant dissertation on this verse and purports by Śrīla Prabhupada. And we'll move towards the questions and answers in a minute. I just wanted to comment that Yaśodā Prabhu, you go into the marketplace of spiritual life and you have to be very discriminate on what is right and what is wrong, because there are so many different spiritual so-called gurus that are using their knowledge, whether it's of the Bible or of other scriptures, for a business endeavor. Because of all the different businesses that you can enter, what is the most profitable? Well, the most profitable is the business of spiritual deception. And many people enter this business in order to accumulate money. And so, as Lord Chaitanya has described, their motive is based on these material aspirations, not on spiritual principles, to share transcendental knowledge for people that are lost in this world and looking for an answer, because everyone is trying to find an answer to the questions that they have, why they were born, who they are, what is the purpose of life. And so these so-called gurus in India, as you mentioned, and Prabhupada was very aware of that. I know when we first went to India, it was quite a experience to see all of these sadhus that march around. I know Vinkat is in South India. You must see these people moving around constantly, exploiting people who are sincere in their search for truth, but are being misled by so many different sahajiyas. Sahajya, we talked about it yesterday, are these imposters, these people that project some kind of so-called spiritual advancement, but in fact, their motive is mundane. Just like Prabhupada used to use the example, and I remember when we used to come to India, Vinkat, we'd be there. If you went into the marketplace and you didn't know the difference between silk and rayon, and when we first went in the early days, We didn't really know the difference. You know, I had to go buy the saris and for the ladies at the temple. So you go to buy the silk, but they sold you rayon. So like that, it could be gold. Instead of gold, they sold you brass. And the naive devotee wouldn't know the difference between brass and gold. So like that, when you go into the marketplace of spiritual life, you have to find what is a bona fide teacher and who is the bogus teacher. Prabhupada explained here in the purport, the Bhagavatam, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam are undoubtedly transcendental subjects, but even though they are so, such transcendental matters are not to be received from the professional man who spoils the whole thing like the serpent spoils the milk simply by touch with the tongue. It's a very precise analogy here. Just by the touch, the motive, if the motive is impure, then the whole thing becomes spoiled. So we're very fortunate in the Prabhupada Disciples Association to understand that Śrīla Prabhupada is the pure devotee of Krishna, and his message is unadulterated and untouched by material motive. And that's why we promote the reading of his unadulterated books and the teachings that he gave us through all of his letters, thousands and thousands of letters and thousands of pages of scripture, thousands of lectures. So by the grace of technology, Prabhupada is still living with us in transcendental sound. And anyone else who tries to say that you need a living guru does not understand the nature of a transcendental science. And the transcendental science here is described, Prabhupada explains it, in hearing and chanting. It is in this sound transmission from the pure devotee. And we are blessed, and we are preaching according to that principle that Prabhupada still lives in sound. So we'll move forward. We've got so many people on the call today from around the globe. And we're interested in, if you have any questions on these very, let me say, very detailed purports, very deep spiritual explanations, eloquently describing the path of spiritual life to us all. If you have any questions, please come forward with them or comments. Yaśodā, Prabhu, please, could you comment?
I think it's a very important point for devotees to grasp. Just very recently, I heard from some devotees who visited another community of devotees. Mm-hmm. And when some local devotees found out that these people accept Śrīla Prabhupada as their spiritual master, as their guru, they became subjected to discrimination and harassment and criticism. So the point is, why are we hearing Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam? Why are we hearing Bhagavad Gita? Why are we distributing this knowledge to other people? In other words, why is it that the books of Śrīla Prabhupada, in other words, why is it that Śrīla Prabhupada spent so much time writing these books? He was working day and night to get these books, get them printed, and he kept telling his students repeatedly, read my books, study my books. When we analyze the last three great acharyas in our sampradaya, Bhaktivedanta Thakur, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada, and our Śrīla Prabhupada, What was their principal method of preaching? What was their favorite method of dissemination of Krishna consciousness? Publication, books. Prabhupada used to say that his Guru Maharaj used to often say, the mridanga you can hear for 1 or 2 blocks, but the brihad mridanga, the printing press, printing books, that can go all over the world. So this is very important because the message that is being presented and given by Śrīla Prabhupada is very powerful. This is not just some academic writing, some professional scholar. There's a lot of scholars. There's a lot of academic teachers, PhDs, master degrees who can also present various aspects of Chaitanya philosophy, Krishna philosophy. But a pure devotee, somebody who is completely beyond any personal motivation, that is very rare. That is very, very rare. That is why Prabhupada recommended in the middle 1970s, we used to go on Sankirtan, and Prabhupada heard that we were getting into arguments on the sidewalks with many persons. Prabhupada said, what will your 15 minutes do? Just give them one of my books, because there is special potency in the words of the pure devotee. Special in Bombay, on April 6, 1971, Śrīla Prabhupada explained, Namo Mahabhadanyaya. So there is a program of Krishna. Sometimes he comes himself. Sometimes he comes as a devotee. Sometimes he leaves behind him instructions like Bhagavad Gita. And sometimes he authorizes somebody to preach this cult. Of course, anyone who is a sincere devotee is authorized. This is another description by Śrīla Prabhupada, an indirect, veiled description of Śrīla Prabhupada, pointing out to his special empowered status. And devotees should learn this and be very faithful to Prabhupada's original works. Hare Krishna. I believe Andabahya Mataji seems to have her hands up. Yes, Mataji, please go ahead.
Nice to see all of you guys again. It's very distressful to us that haven't been in the movement as long as some of you wonderful senior devotees, to see that some of your god brothers or god sisters haven't grasped that it is our job, all of us, to take the juniors and show them Krishna consciousness by example, and to understand that whoever Krishna, Śrīla Prabhupada, has set in your path, you are to show them extreme love and protection, and no matter what they're thinking, no matter if you think they're straying, don't reject them because they might have a different thought than you, but embrace them and show them, if you think you know more, show them lovingly how to get there. So that mood was missing in one person only. We had some very, very wonderful, elevated association that is very dear to us. We met some very sincere devotees, and we learned a lot. We were able to go to Mangal Arati for the 2 weeks we were there. Every day we got the opportunity to offer arati to Śrīla Prabhupada in the temple room and to do some service and lead Mangal Arati, lead Guru Puja. So many different things we got to do. And we made quick friends with Mother Felini and her husband, and Mahuda, Harikad, and Madhu's wife and him, he's Bhagavati, very amazing, amazing devotees that just did that. They just took us under their arms, showed us so much love and compassion and acceptance. And they taking their shirt off their back for us for any little things that we had that we needed. And so all in all, it was very, very positive experience with one person only in the whole village. Only one person decided that they didn't want us there, and they went up against us. And I'm not going to tell the name. I'm not going to blast him. I'm just going to say it was sad to see. That's all.
Okay. Well, very interesting. What was being described by you, I believe, was your recent visit to the Prabhupada village run by Madhuha, just to give everyone a context. I wanted to ask Vinkat if he could do this for us. Here in the Bhagavatam verse, it will refer again to the fact that if these matters are not to be received from the professional man who spoils the whole thing like the serpent spoils the milk simply by the touch with the tongue. Now, here we have a situation where Prabhupada has presented the books in a certain way, and then certain disciples of his have changed some of the text. And yesterday, Vinkat brought up an example of that. You can either show that example again, which will be fresh for us to read again, or if you have another example, Prabhu, of the changed books. So in other words, we have something that is perfect, but it's being changed by certain people for material motives. Vinkat, please.
Yes, this is from Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Leela 19, chapter 19, text 157. So the original written by Śrīla Prabhupāda was, I think, very important for all of us who don't find the current ISKCON society suitable. So if one thinks that there are many pseudo-devotees or non-devotees in the Krishna Consciousness Society, one can keep direct company with the spiritual master. And if there's any doubt, one should consult the spiritual master. However, unless one follows the spiritual master's instructions and the regular principles governing chanting and hearing the holy name of the Lord, one cannot become a pure devotee. By one's mental concoctions, one falls down. By associating with non-devotees, one breaks the regular principles and is thereby lost. So, yeah, I mean, that's pretty clear what Prabhupada said.
Mm-hmm.
But then this is what they've changed it to. Now, if you read from the current vedabase.io, which is the official Vedabase, propagated by ISKCON, they've added, instead of if one thinks there are many pseudo-devotees, they've changed to even if one thinks that there are many pseudo-devotees or non-devotees in the Krishna Consciousness Society, still, this whole thing has been added, this whole sentence here. Still, one should stick to the society. If one thinks the society's members are not pure devotees, one can keep direct company with the spiritual master. And if there's any doubt, one should consult the spiritual master. And then the rest is pretty much the same. But I mean, that just addition of that sentence, still one should stick to the society. It just shows their agenda. And there's also the other examples like, even Bhagavad Gita chapter 4, verse 34.
Yeah. So the point is this, that they've changed the entire system of Guru Tattva. For example, if a guru falls down due to material contamination, then the disciple, so-called disciple of the guru, should go back into the marketplace of the guru system and pick another guru. Just choose another one. And in this way, they've adulterated the system of Krishna consciousness, as Prabhupada has explained here today without any confusion. Like yesterday, we were reading Yaśodā Prabhu, these letters from Prabhupada to Rupanuga Prabhu, and the letter that was sent to me specifically about association, and still people didn't understand what Prabhupada was saying. They still wanted to find more veracity in further letters and further discussions without even just hearing basically what was stated, and then continue to speculate on what Prabhupada has written profoundly in these books. Yaśodā, please.
That's a very important point. Let me give you a little bit of an encounter I had with Śrīla Prabhupada. This was on the 22nd of June, 1977 in Vrindavan. This is the day of the famous rascal editors conversation in Prabhupada's garden behind the Krishna Balaram temple in Prabhupada's house.
Rascal, could you, what was that? The rascal editors?
It's called Rascal Editors Conversation. That's the title of the conversation in the Prabhupada conversation books.
Okay.
What happens, we were reading Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, there were two different editions of the Bhagavatam, and it was brought to Prabhupada's attention that the books had been edited. Now, this is a fairly controversial issue because a lot of people feel that Prabhupada allowed certain devotees and recommended certain devotees to edit his books and correct whatever mistakes or alleged mistakes were there. So basically what happened is that Prabhupada, within that conversation, it came to his attention that after the publication of the first edition, his books were subsequently being re-edited. Prabhupada did not like that. And in that conversation, Prabhupada said, the next printing again should be the original way. And some people have difficulty with that. I don't have any difficulty understanding that Prabhupada wanted the books returned to the first printed edition. Next, part of that conversation, Prabhupada found out that the Ishopanishad also had been edited. And Prabhupada says they cannot change anything. My understanding is they referred to the editors, the publishers, the GBC, whoever was involved in the publication of Prabhupada's books. He did not want his books to be changed. Now, let me get to the story here. After all of that, everybody dispersed, went to their rooms, and I ended up somewhere or other in Prabhupada's room in Vrindavan. Now, those of you who have been in India know it gets pretty warm. Like Venkat Prabhu is in India, he was telling me the other day, even in Bangalore, it gets, at this time of the year, sometimes 85 degrees, 90 degrees Fahrenheit. So it gets a little warm. So they have fans, ceiling fans. So Prabhupada had these crystal balls on his desk so the papers don't fly off. He took his crystal ball and slammed it on the desk, and it made a very strong noise. And I was startled. And Prabhupada pointed his finger at me and started to raise his voice, says, you there, you tell them, you tell the GBC, if they change one word from what I've written, it will spoil everything I've done. Now get out and tell them. And I was so stunned, I couldn't even move. Prabhupada said, you get out and go write a letter. So I left, told the secretary to the secretary, the lead secretary. I ended up writing a letter to Satsvarup, never got a reply. I understand that they got my letter and they wrote some reply somewhere. But the point is, Prabhupada did not want his books to be amended, to be changed. It is not only disrespectful, it is offensive to think that one can correct the spiritual master under the plea of an editorial embellishment. And we see, just like Venkat Prabhu showed on the screen, what they're doing. They're trying to change the philosophy. Look at your Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, text 34. He has seen the truth, has been changed, so they have seen the truth. Oh, excuse me, who is they? Who authorized that change? Same thing with Chaitanya Charitamrita, the beginning of Adi Lila, chapter 1. Prabhupada clearly says that Jagannath Das Babaji initiated Bhaktivedanta Thakur. They didn't like that. because they claim it did not conform to their understanding of initiation in ISKCON. Sorry to inform you, your understanding is defective, and you have no business changing the words of the pure devotee. Prabhupada's words are directly dictated by Krishna. It is not just some literary ABC translation. This is the words of a pure realized devotee. Very important. Prabhupada says in a letter on June 6, 1969, great liberated souls come to this world only to serve the Supreme Lord's mission. Regarding the first question in your letter about how do we know of the spiritual abode, since once going there, no one returns. You should know that the great liberated souls and incarnations who appear from time to time in this material world are not actually coming back, because they are never subject to material contamination or the laws of material nature. For the purpose of delivering the fallen living entities, they come here temporarily and then go back when their business is finished. And this is all under the direct order of the Lord. So the appearance of the Lord, or the great liberated souls in the material world, is different from the appearance of the contaminated living entity who is forced to take birth in the material world due to his desire to lord it over the world. So in other words, this is a very important point. Someone like Śrīla Prabhupāda, an eternally liberated soul, is in that category. He's not somebody who became a pure devotee, somebody who became a liberated soul. He was always liberated right from his birth. And one should never think that you should have to correct or to rectify the so-called alleged mistakes of the pure devotee. There's another conversation where Prabhupada says, if you think that your spiritual master is mistaken, you are mistaken. Hare Krishna.
Yes, thank you. That was an amazing explanation directly from your experience with Śrīla Prabhupada. But somehow or other, and everyone should be aware of this, people have a tendency, if they're ill-motivated, to misrepresent the words of the spiritual master for their own particular purpose. This is called Sahajya. This Sahajyism I was discussing with Yaśodā yesterday in detail in a phone conversation with him, is all pervasive currently in the society, that people are claiming to be this or that, but in fact, they're still contaminated by their own material purposes. Just like we have all these types of gurus outside of the ISKCON group, and their main purpose is to accumulate money. Some of these gurus, they buy 50 Rolls Royces because they get their money from their disciples. The money comes from the family that leaves money to the children. They're the disciples, so they may have millions of dollars, and they'll pass it over to the gurus, thinking that by giving them money, this will liberate them from the material world. It's very common, everyone. We know what is one of the richest organizations in the world is the Catholic Church. Why? Because people transfer their wealth to the priests, thinking that if I give my money, I'll be saved, that I can buy my way back to the spiritual world. This is complete Sahajyism, and it's all pervasive. People sitting on the mental platform thinking, I chant my rounds, I do these, follow these principles, I chant, and now I've become eligible to go back home, back to Godhead. I'm now a pure devotee. Complete Sahajyism. We discussed it yesterday. I'll finish up here and we'll move into the questions, Vinkat. The example of Jayananda, we talked about Jayananda yesterday. He went back to Godhead because he was the servant of the servant of the servant of the spiritual master. He was not interested in promoting himself as some great devotee, but to be a humble servant. When Janas Priya told that story, Yasoda, it was just extraordinary that Dhananjaya, or the Prabhu, was in the hospital.
Jayananda.
Was in the hospital in the last days of his life, and he had a simple picture of Jagannath, of Lord Chaitanya, of Prabhupada, and he took a clean sheet and put it on his bed, and put his pictures on the bed and worshiped them, and slept on the floor. Can you imagine what consciousness he was at? And then when Prabhupada heard that he left, he told everyone that Jayananda went back to Godhead. This is the example of a great devotee. Now, we'll go forward, Vinkat Prabhu. I see we have some questions in our chat. Is there anything related to the class right now that we can bring forward? Could you see what there's there?
There's a question by Bhakta Harit Prasad Prabhu.
Yes.
And then there's also a question by someone who attended yesterday, also had a question, but we couldn't get to it. But first, this question by Bhakta Hari Prasad Prabhu was, when chanting, more often than not, my mind wanders here and there. Even though I try not to commit offenses, I tend to commit them. How do I overcome this bottleneck?
Yeah. Ram Raghava, are you with us on the class? I believe you are. Maybe you could share the answer for us. You had an answer before like this. Yasoda? Maybe you could give an answer.
This is a very good question, which is often asked. There was a lecture Prabhupada once gave. It says, if there is offenses, the idea is to chant without offenses. There is nam aparad. There's 3 stages of chanting. Nam aparad, in the beginning, one chants, and there's offenses involved. And then there's nam abhas, where the clearing stage, by chanting and following, gradually the offenses become cleared. And the topmost stage is called nam shuddha, or the pure stage, where one chants without offenses. So in the neophyte stage, we chant, and there may be offenses. There is a verse in the Padma Purana which explains, Bhumos kalita padanam bhumire vavalambanam. Just like if you go up a stairway, if there is a slippery stairway, you're trying to go up, then it says that if you try again and again and again, eventually you will succeed and come to the top. So similarly, even if there's offenses, one should not stop the chanting. One should chant with paying attention, and gradually one will come to the platform of not having offenses. Bhumos kalita padanam bhumire vavalambanam twai jata paradanam twameva sharanta Prabhu. One of Krishna's name is called Prabhu, Master. My dear Master, you give me your shelter, that I will chant again and again, so I will become free from these offenses. So this is the mindset, to fix the mind, to pay attention. That's why I keep saying, when you chant, take help from Prabhupada. Use I'm assuming everybody here has a cell phone or some kind of electronic device where you can hear the chanting. You can chant on YouTube, or go to that website, causelessmercy.com, where there are so many beautiful songs of Śrīla Prabhupada. There's japa tape of Śrīla Prabhupada. And in this way, you make nice advancement. Oh, I see that Ram Raghava Prabhu is there. Prabhu, please give us your bhashya.
Yeah, there was a question, Ram Raghava, about chanting. I thought maybe you could share your insights.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. I was in the kitchen, so I was listening. So please forgive me for not being there right away. Wonderful answer by Yaśodā-nandana Prabhu. I just wanted to add something practical. The point about not giving up is very important, because sometimes Maya will trick you into thinking well, you're not, making progress. You're not a pure devotee, etc. And so you give up. And that's why the association of devotees is very important, because we can uplift each other and encourage each other in the association of devotees to make progress despite difficulties. And one practical thing that I have found is that even though I think somebody had brought up that japa was meant to be chanted sitting down, but Śrīla Prabhupāda, of course, being the empowered acharya, knew what difficulties we will have. And he recommended it's easier to chant and pay attention when you engage more senses. So if you, instead of sitting down, if you pace back and forth like Śrīla Prabhupada did, or walk and chant like he did on morning walks, it becomes easier to keep the mind focused. And even though it will still wander, you can bring it back. And of course, the most important thing is to chant in the association of devotees. And we are fortunate to have this association.
Excellent. Just quickly, we're going to move to the questions, Vinkat, from Tattva Darshana. I think they're wonderful questions that we can review here at the Prabhupada Disciples Association meeting today. It is a blessing for everyone in this group to be able to get the association of other Vaishnavas, and we're getting a lot of positive response globally from our membership that they've been looking for this type of association where they had a chance to focus strictly on Śrīla Prabhupada as guru and not deal with a lot of sahaja people that are projecting themselves as being bona fide spiritual leaders. Go ahead, Vinkat. Let's read the first comment from Tattva Darshana. He's in India as well.
Okay. Should we get to this question by HD? I think someone named Abhimanyu, he wants to ask a question.
Okay,
Yesterday.
Go ahead.
So let's
go to that.
Go ahead, Prabhu. Can you ask your question?
First of all, my humble pranam to everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Just speak carefully into the microphone. Thank you.
Thank you. I heard some keywords in your speech. First of all, I want to ask about what is the goal of God? Goal of God.
What is the goal of God?
Yes.
Well, it's. I'll give a quick answer. It's his goal is described yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata. Whenever there's a decline in religious practice, then he comes. Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya taduskratam. Dharma samstapanartaya sambhavami yuge yuge. You know those verses, Prabhu?
Yes.
Those are the goals to deliver the pious and annihilate the miscreants. That is his purpose. Another question, please.
Yes, another question which comes next to it is that if God wants to eliminate all those miscreants or impure people, then in first place, why do he creates them? To set an example in front of us that we should not take that path.
These are common questions that we do get from new students, neophyte students. Maybe Yaśodā could share the answer for us. Why does God create these problems for the conditioned souls? Yaśodā Prabhu.
Yes, that is, Prabhupada explains that this is because of the rebellious nature of the conditioned soul. Therefore, there is suffering in the world. Just like, why does the government make a prison house? Does the government like to spend money on prison houses? They know that they don't like to do that, but they have to, because there will always be a class of men that will break the law, a criminal element, always, in every society, everywhere. So you cannot stop that, and the government has to make arrangements. Similarly, in the material world, the conditioned souls have rebelled, disobedience mentality against the order of God. That's why all of these great acharyas and prophets, Jesus, Muhammad, Ramanuja, Madhva, Lord Krishna, Lord Rama, even Lord Buddha, they always tell people, do not try to stay in this material world. Go back to Godhead. Tamasi ma jyotir gamaya. Don't stay in the darkness. Go to the light. All the instructions. Stop trying to enjoy here, but obey the laws of God and go back to Godhead. That is the idea. And if one does that, then he will feel relief. But it is very difficult for somebody who have this false enjoying mentality to understand the plan of God, because they have a different mindset. They have a different mentality. That is why there have the scriptures, the great saints, the great prophets, Krishna's son, great devotees like Śrīla Prabhupāda to come here to give a chance to the conditioned soul to go back home, back to Godhead. That's a very important point. Now, another thing that I've seen here in some of these questions, the issue about chanting. The chanting, in the beginning, it's natural that there will be some offenses, but one should not think that I'll keep chanting, and even if there's offenses, that will be forgiven because that's the power of the holy name. That's an offensive mentality. We don't want to do that. We want to clear the offenses. We want to eliminate the offenses, reduce the offenses to become situated on the pure platform. That's the whole process of bhakti. Hare Krishna.
I see that Tattva Darshana has a couple of questions in regards to etiquette in front of the deities. And I'm going to get Janas Priya to, yes, Venkat, was that you?
No, should I read the question?
Okay, I was just going to make a comment and then please read the question, and then we'll get Janas Priya in Hawaii to give an answer. But it's a very important point that he's brought up about etiquette. And I wanted to make everyone aware of the fact, in the early days, back in the 70s, no one ever clapped for the speaker of the Bhagavatam in the class. In other words, it was an offense. We were very well aware of the fact that in front of the deities in the temple, no one should be glorified. And then gradually, as time went on, this type of practice started to evolve into the society, that they be cheering and clapping for people in front of the deities. So a very offensive atmosphere started to take over the environment in the temple, because the rule is that you're supposed to focus 100%. All attention is on the deity, not on the individuals that are speaking or chanting in the temple room. Janas Priya, how is everything in Hawaii? Maybe you could give us, let's read the question first. Sorry, Venkat, please read his question, and then we'll let Prabhu give the answer. Go ahead.
Śrīla Prabhupada gives the proper etiquette. So Śrīla Prabhupada says, according to the rules and regulations, no one should accept obeisances in the temple of the Lord before the deity, nor is it proper for a devotee to offer obeisances and touch the feet of the spiritual master before the deity. This is considered an offense. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself was personally the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, it was not actually offensive to wash his lotus feet in the temple. However, because he was playing the part of an Acharya, the Lord considered himself an ordinary human being. He also wanted to give instructions to ordinary human beings. The point is that even though one plays the part of a spiritual master, he should not accept obeisances or permit a disciple to wash his feet before the deity. This is a matter of etiquette. Madhya Lila, chapter 12, text 127. It's from the
Yes. So he's bringing up the point of etiquette. Janas Priya, what is your experience as a lifetime member of the society in terms of etiquette in the temple room?
Well, in this particular case, everything is by case, time and place and circumstance, right? So
Yeah,
I
just
think
try to get.
Achintya Veda Veda Tattva, you know, because we were there, the doors were open, the deities were there. Śrīla Prabhupada would walk in the room, or when Prabhupada offered obeisances, he always offered obeisances after giving class, so we all offer obeisances. And
Yeah.
every time Prabhupada walked in the room, we offer obeisances.
Yes.
So it's all about time and place and circumstance. But if somebody walks in the prasadam room while you're taking prasadam, you having a relationship with prasadam. So prasadam is very sacred. So some devotees used to offer obeisances when a sannyasi walked in the prasadam room. Some didn't because they felt, you know, it's an individual thing. Each person is in a different level. And Prabhupada gives us instructions, and then we have to use our intelligence and apply it to time and circumstance. But if we remain on the humble platform, then that's the safest platform. So if we try to apply being humble, not to fake to be humble, but in reality, you're actually humble because you feel, you know, I'm just an aspiring bhakta. Someday I might become a devotee by the mercy of the Vaishnavas.
Mm-hmm.
So we try to follow as much as we can and pray to Krishna to give us the strength. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, he fortifies this. He says, I carry what you lack and preserve what you have. So Krishna is right there. He's putting the shoulder. There's one pastime of Śrīla Prabhupada. A girl disciple is trying to clean a picture behind where Prabhupada is sitting. And Prabhupada sees that she's hesitating because she might brush part of her sari or something against Prabhupada. And Prabhupada looked at her and says, for serving Krishna, you might step on my head. So it's, again, this is not etiquette, but Prabhupada is saying time and circumstance. You have to be practical in Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is not some concocted method, no. Everything we have, Prabhupada said, every single instruction you need to become successful in this Krishna conscious process is in my books. So we have Prabhupada's original books, and we consult Prabhupada's books for our needs. There's Prabhupada's letters. There's so much material, there's no excuse. So time and place and Hare Krishna.
Yes. Glories to Prabhupada. Thank you very much. I did enjoy the story you gave about Prabhupada and etiquette, and when it came to the cooking of chapatis in the kitchen, and he took a chapati himself before it was offered. Maybe you could recall that story for us again at this class.
It happened in LA 1973, maybe. We're in the kitchen, Prabhupada walks in, chapatis are being cooked. Prabhupada sees this chapatis, really beautiful, perfect puffing. Prabhupada just grabs it and takes a bite. And then he knows we're all looking, right? We're like, and immediately he says, yes, I could do this, but you could not.
Yes. Well, the relationship between the disciple and the pure devotee is a very unique one, a very special one. And because the devotee sees the spiritual master, and in our case, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, as the true representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And in the Nectar of Devotion, it says that one who is my devotee is not my devotee, Krishna says, but one who is the devotee of my devotee, he is my devotee. So this was the etiquette that we followed in the early days of the Krishna consciousness movement, and up to this point as well, is that Prabhupada is not God. He's not God. Prabhupada is, for us, as good as God. And even though there was a situation that came up in the movement in the early days where people started to say that Prabhupada was God, maybe Yaśodā Prabhu, you could recall that story for us.
Yes, this was an incident at 1970 in New Vrindavan for Janmashtami, where certain devotees started to preach that Prabhupada had left the society, he was displeased with the devotees, and that Prabhupada had withdrawn his mercy from all the devotees, and Prabhupada was the super soul, Prabhupada was God, and Prabhupada did not like that. Prabhupada's point was basically, you cannot preach like that. Prabhupada said, if you become a spiritual master someday, does that mean you become God? So this is an example of the kind of misconception and misrepresentation that can infiltrate without proper training and without proper understanding. That whole issue was cleared up eventually. But in other words, Prabhupada wrote these books for a very good reason. He wanted the devotees to be educated and knowledgeable into the science of Krishna consciousness. And even this point this point about etiquette, about the spiritual master not accepting obeisance in front of the deities, well, we saw during the manifested presence of Prabhupada, Prabhupada took the Vyasa Puja right in front of the deities in Los Angeles and many other places. But the point is, who is this person? Who is Prabhupada? Is he like a regular devotee? This is the first point. There are certain restrictions in the scriptures. I keep giving this example. If you look at pictures of the opening of the Krishna Balaram temple in Vrindavan, India in 1975 at Ram Navami, Prabhupada is wearing a shirt. Now, Prabhupada is doing the artik to the deities, and he's fanning the deities, offering the incense, but he is wearing a sewn cloth. If you look in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there is a restriction that people engage in the direct worship of the deity, the pujaris, should not wear sewn cloth. And then it says if a person does that, he'll take 7 births as a leper. Now, are people going to say Prabhupada's going to take 7 births as a leper because he wore a kurta, which is sewn cloth? But this is for regular devotees. This is for neophytes who are trying to advance. A person who's a paramamsa or a topmost Mahabhagavat is beyond these rules and regulations. Although Śrīla Prabhupada followed these rules, followed these regulations, and gave by examples. Just like I've given this example in 1969, Prabhupada went in the kitchen in Los Angeles, and devotees were cooking some halva. Prabhupada took some halva out of the pot, and he ate some of it, and he told the devotees that Krishna likes this halva. And devotees told Prabhupada, Prabhupada, it's not offered. But Prabhupada says, Krishna likes the halva. So we cannot imitate that. We cannot do the kind of activities that Prabhupada did. Prabhupada was a very specially empowered devotee. And although he did some of these activities, he set the examples. He gave the instruction in his books. And we should be very, very careful not to imitate. As a matter of fact, early on in 1978, when we brought up the argument that nobody can take worship in any ISKCON temple in front of Prabhupada because Prabhupada's picture is there and Prabhupada's deity is there. So their argument, oh, does that mean that none of us will ever be able to take worship? Correct. That's why Prabhupada did that, to establish himself as the Acharya for the next 10,000 years, the specially empowered Acharya, the Shakti Avatar. No one can imitate Prabhupada. And we saw the result when people tried to imitate Prabhupada. There was a police officer in Berkeley, California, an officer, Joe Sanchez. He was investigating some things that were going on with the temple there in early 1980s. And he made a remark to a devotee named Sulochan. He said, there was Prabhupada. And then there were those who thought that they wear Prabhupada. There's a big difference between Prabhupada himself and imitator Prabhupada. I call them the Anupads. The Anupads may think they're liberated soul. They may think they're dancing with the gopis. They may think they're Paramamsas, but their behaviors and their long track record speaks for itself. Hare Krishna.
Very interesting comments from Yaśodā-nandana Prabhu. Bhaktivedanta, I see that we've had a further inquiry from the Prabhu there, and you've given an answer. Could you just go over the question and answer for us with our group today?
Okay, sure. And then Tattvadarshi Prabhu had his hand up.
After that, we'll go to him.
So the question was, Prabhu, what I wanted to ask is why eternal soul detaches us from it to dwell with Maya? Means why in first place he creates universe, religion, or societies so that they could get polluted and God comes again to eliminate them from his made world, which you said is the goal of God. So I replied, it's because we have independence, Prabhu. Even Lord Krishna doesn't want to interfere with our independence to be separate from him. And then he replied saying, we are not independent. He writes our destiny, though we think we ourselves do it. All paths are preset. And then I replied, not according to our philosophy, Prabhu. Śrīla Prabhupāda says we misuse our little independence to end up here. And then Prabhu, you know Krishna does leelas in Mahabharata and Ramayana. He already knows and let things happen and let, I think that's...
A little bit of confusion there. I just wanted to say to the Prabhu that's asking these questions, like why? Now, this is not the right approach to gaining spiritual information. There's nothing wrong with a why. Why did God do this? Why am I suffering? Why am I so poor? Why do I have cancer? These things are going on in the material world. Yes, there is misery all around us. And this is part of the nature of material existence. If you can't see it, then just open your eyes. This is a place, it's called Marchaloka. What does that mean? Do you know, Prabhu? It means the planet of death. So you can ask me, well, why does everyone have to die? Because that is the law of the material world. Birth, death, disease, old age. These things are going on. It's not so important why, it's how we get out. Now, we have a solution for you. And we've explained it this morning in detail by reading Prabhupada's books, hearing and chanting, association with devotees, taking prasadam, and chanting your rounds, and making advancement daily by focusing on bhakti yoga as a system to get out. It's not so important to know how you got here. It's much more important to know how to get out. And here is the answer. So listen carefully. Venkat, please. What other question do we have? Anything else on our chat?
No, not from
Tattva Darshana. Yeah. Prabhu, you're in that
Jaipur.
Jaipur.
He's in Jaipur.
Exactly. Prabhu, Tattva Darshana, speak closely to the microphone.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranams to all devotees there. So am I audible to you, Prabhu?
Yes, we can hear you.
So in that text I have mentioned that there Prabhupada was telling that if one offer obeisances to the spiritual master before the deity, it is considered as an offense. Generally, we read from Prabhupada teachings that we should avoid the offenses to the Vaishnavas, to the deities, and to the holy name. So and I also heard during the olden days, there were temples before they used to offer obeisance to Prabhupada. So those days, but now we have a big temples, everything is there. So this, so I want to more thing on how to understand this regarding this.
Yeah, I'm going to give a quick answer, and then someone can give an answer as well. You know, the position of the disciples in front of the spiritual master, namely Śrīla Prabhupāda, was one of literally awe and reverence, highest level of respect. And Prabhupada accepted that relationship between us and him. And this was the plan that he had, like Janas Priya was saying, time and circumstance. So the rule for us was to worship or serve the spiritual master. And in this way, we were pleasing Krishna, because Krishna is pleased by that. But when imitation people take that role and they sit in the temple and they expect all of us to bow down before them, and they expect us to offer them all this glorification, even up to the point nowadays where they clap, as I mentioned. The person gives all that, and no one ever heard of that. It was like, you know, before I became a devotee, I was in the entertainment industry, and that was the whole idea. You went in front of the audience and you would perform, and then they clap and cheer. Yeah, oh, what a great person. But this was quite foreign for us when we were in the temple, because that was exactly the opposite that you were looking for. You were not looking for any praise or glorification in the temple room, that you were some kind of great devotee. No. You were always there as a humble servant, and any kind of crowd reaction that way was unacceptable. So this is going on in the society to this day, and now it's out of hand. It's completely out of hand. And there's all kinds of cheering and glorification of people in front of the deity. In fact, they're up to the point where they chant with their back to the deity. The person's chanting and they've got their back to the deity. The way we used to stand, if Yaśodā knows that, it was very beautiful. There would be two rows. One on the left was the men, and on the right would say it was the women looking towards the deity house. And then Prabhupada's Vyasa-san was seated behind us, and there was no people standing in front of Prabhupada for his vision to see the deity. Is that still going on? No, it's completely changed. It's more of a Hinduization of there was a specific etiquette that we always left the aisle open so that Prabhupada could see the deity without any disturbance. Do you recall that, Yaśodā?
Yes. When the first temple in Toronto on Gerrard Street was there, I remember in 1970 I went there, and it's exactly the setup that it was. Same thing with the temple in Los Angeles on Watsika Avenue. There was the deities on one end, and on the other hand is Prabhupada's Vyasasana, and then on both sides, the ladies on one side and the men on the other side. That was the standard, and everybody is looking at the deity. In other words, the kirtan is being done not as some kind of rock and roll show bottle. No, it is done for the satisfaction and the pleasure of the deities. Nowadays, I see a lot of these kirtan, people are doing this like a performance, like a theatrical or a musical performance. That was not the idea. There's no such thing as doing kirtan just for recognition or for show. That's not why we do kirtan. We do kirtan to please Krishna, to please Lord Chaitanya, to please the Panchatattva and Śrīla Prabhupāda. That is the whole point. So this is a very important point which has slipped over the years. And I see, so it's like I keep hammering on this point again. Yesterday I got 3 different videos sent to me by a devotee with 3 different kind of mantras I never heard before. I don't know where they get these mantras. I don't know if they have a mantra factory somewhere where they manufacture these mantras, they invent these mantras. I mean, anybody who's been in India, especially in Bengal or Vrindavan, Radhakund, they know there's a lot of different songs and different mantras and different ways. I'm not trying to criticize anybody here, but my point is, Śrīla Prabhupada gave us certain specific mantras for kirtan, certain chants, like people would chant Govinda Jaya Jaya, that is bona fide, Jai Jagannath, that's another bona fide, or there is a song in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishna, 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 hey, Ram Raghava, like that. There are certain bona fide songs, but what we're seeing now is entirely different. People have gotten these manufactured, concocted mantras with this gypsy dancing, and I'm looking at this like there's no way they would be able to do this in the presence of Śrīla Prabhupada. Prabhupada would have it stopped immediately. Even during his presence, several times, he would send either his secretary or his personal servant to stop the kirtan if things were not done correctly. I mean, this is a very important point, and this is very troublesome. It has only been 46 years since Prabhupada's departure, and now we see it's like a different sampradaya.
Mm-hmm.
We are not a show bottle sampradaya. We do this process of kirtan for Krishna, for the satisfaction of Krishna, for the pleasure of Krishna, not to draw attention to ourselves. Hare Krishna.
Venkat, Prabhu, you've got your hand. Yes, please.
Yes, sorry, I had a couple of questions. One was, I think Yaśodā-nandana Prabhu mentioned about the what's the use of arguing or debating with people on the street. Instead, give them my book.
Yes.
Śrīla Prabhupada saying that. So my question is, can we just give the book without taking money in return? Because I've read conflicting things about this. So I just wanted to know, can we just give our books to people, or do we need to ask for donation or something?
Okay, I can answer that. Prabhupada did prefer that we accepted a donation for a book, because then it has some value. If you give somebody something for free, then they don't consider it has much value, so that they may never read it or never, just may throw it away in the garbage. They used to do that in the airports in America, where you give them all these books and then really force them to pay something, and then they just sort of got coerced into it. And what would happen? They'd find all the books in the garbage at the end of the day, and they'd pull them out and then redistribute them. So, I mean, the idea is, sometimes you may want to give a book for free. I mean, it's not really free. It could be an exchange, of friendship like that, and you're trying to gift them a gift of a book, and they acknowledge it. But it's a question of time. Like I think Jonas Priya said, it's time and circumstance for you, Prabhu. Whenever you're in a situation, you could give it, or you could ask them for a donation. I think people sometimes they prefer to pay for it. I know here in Hamilton, we have one of our bhaktas, Bhakta Trevor, and he made that point to me when he bought the books that I was distributing to him. He said, "No, I want to pay." That's what he said. And when he said it to me, I thought to myself, this is exactly the idea that Prabhupada was trying to instill in us, is that, because he said, the reason I want them for myself, and they're mine, and I'm going to pay for them. So he exemplified that wonderful point to me practically in front of me here in the city here. I saw a chat comment here. Some fellow there this Bhakta said that his question was not considered to be worthless. That is his speculation. No one used the word worthless. We were trying to clarify the confusion. So we gave the answer. That's not worthless. That's the answer. You may think that in your mind, brother, that it was worthless. I never thought it was worthless. I was thinking you're not listening. That's as simple as it is. If you don't want to listen to the answer, don't claim that it's worthless, that we said that your question was worthless. It is a valuable question. We gave the answer. Vincott, please, your hand's still up.
My other question was regarding, Lord Chaitanya says we should be, humbler than a blade of grass, like that. My question is, when dealing with people, especially they'll have a lot of ideas, that, Śrīla Prabhupāda appointed gurus, they want us to be gurus. How do we remain humble when we know they're wrong? And do we just ignore them and just say, oh, yes, you're right, whatever? Or we have to fight philosophy, on the basis of philosophy, we have to fight with them, right? So how do we stay humble? That's my question.
I'll give a quick answer to that. A debate is not it's a debate of two positions, two people. One has one position and the other. So we debate these questions with them. That's as simple as it is. We give the answers. And we go forward like that, step by step. This is our position. As far as emotion or, any kind of material result that we're expecting, we should not expect people to accept in all cases that what we're explaining as the philosophy, they will accept. But I found this out, and Yaśodā can confirm this, I think. A lot of times you get into a debate. I've had debates with certain devotees, godbrothers of mine, that went on for months of discussion. And then in the end, they just tell me this: oh, I don't want to talk to you anymore. Goodbye. And it's over. They just walk away. I don't want to listen to it. You're telling me that we shouldn't read the books by Jayadvaita? And I go, yeah, that's exactly right. Or you shouldn't associate with the members of the Gaudiya Math. Prabhupada didn't want you to. And they go, well, I don't agree with you. Goodbye. Goodbye. It's a big world. See you later. We did our duty. Yaśodā, please.
Well, this is an important point, because in the Vedic system, in the lives of all the great acharyas, they had debates. But the more Kali Yuga advances, the more it becomes difficult to have civilized disputations, because people have very positions many times that are not based on the search for truth. It's based on false ego or domination over somebody else, or basically trying to rationalize one's irrational position. In other words, it's one thing to have a discussion to find the truth, but if the discussion becomes simply a display of false ego and anger, it's not going anywhere. Just like Prabhupada, there's one conversation in the Prabhupada Conversation book where Prabhupada is telling one gentleman, it says, you may believe whatever you want to believe, but your belief is not necessarily a fact. Your belief may not necessarily a fact. Everybody is entitled to their pious beliefs. But the point is, what is the truth? What is the facts? What are the facts? And that's why when people discuss these issues specifically with regards to the guru issue, a lot of people don't understand the circumstances, the historical circumstances that took place in 77, 78, and 79, how this thing got started and now it got so far out of control. In other words, there is a history behind this. And it's like Hamsadutta, before he departed, made a very good point. Because what happened is many times people will ask questions, why this, why that, why Krishna allowed this, why Prabhupada allowed this, why Prabhupada chose this. And he made the point that we have a problem in our movement with called the nickel and dime philosophy. That people with nickel and dime are very little devotion, very little chanting, very little service, very little reading, very little record of actual service, and they want $1 million realization. Why this? Why that? How come this? How come that? Well, if you follow the process, if you chant, if you read the books, you worship Tulsi, you hear Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, do this for some time, and gradually your head will clear, your brain will get cleared up, your heart will get cleared up, and these issues will come naturally, they'll be understood. But if somebody is still caught up with the pod problem, with the prophet adoration distinction problem, it becomes very difficult to understand the issue. Let me give you an example. In 1986, during the so-called reform, the 50-man committee reform in ISKCON, one of these original 11 told another devotee who personally told me, he wanted to know how big should his picture should be on the altar. And when the devotee told him it doesn't belong there, this belongs to the great acharyas, to the great self-realized soul, the great topmost Bhagavats in our line. He wanted to know whether his picture should be 1 inch or 2 inches as opposed to 5 or 6 inches, because it's all based on self-ambition, profit, adoration, and distinction, how much puja he was going to get. And that is the problem. If there is no personal desire for profit, adoration, distinction, it's not difficult to understand this philosophy. It's not that complicated. I know some devotees on this call who understand things very nicely. And some of the devotees who have been practicing for 50 years, they can't get it. Why? Because of that personal motivation problem. That is the disease, the pratishta problem. Hare Krishna.
Haribo. So we're going to move towards to the end of the class. And I wanted to, before we wind up, is there any, Yaśodā, any specific festivals or anniversaries that are coming up this week that might be important for our membership to be aware of?
Not really.
Okay,
Not
so
really.
there's nothing.
We had the appearance of Lord Rama was this last Thursday. Today is Ekadasi for Kamada Ekadasi, the Mayapur calendar. And then on next Thursday is full moon, Purnima. This is the Balaram Rasa Yatra, Lord Balaram's dance with the gopis in Vrindavan. The appearance of Radhakund, the appearance of Vamsi Vadana Thakur, the appearance of Shyamananda Prabhu, and very special day, next Thursday, April 6, 2023.
April
Thursday,
6th.
very special day. I'll be
Okay.
sending an email later this week with some write-ups about these great acharyas and Lord Balaram. So if anybody is not receiving my emails, you can send me an email at yasoda1008@yahoo.com. Do we have the list of emails, Venkat, and the website addresses?
We'll produce that slide and then we'll be able to show it.
Yeah, I
Okay.
didn't make it yet. I'm sorry.
Okay, that's fine. Don't worry about that. But we want to thank everyone, all of the people who did attend today and seem to carry on with our discussions moving over the time. Normally the class is only an hour and a half, and we're just moving forward every class with questions based on the pulse of the audience and the membership here. So we want to thank you for your interest in Krishna consciousness and the philosophy that we're presenting in the Prabhupada Disciples Association for everyone's enlightenment. And we want to remind everyone that next Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, that's Wednesday, this coming Wednesday, we have the Chaitanya Charitamrita discussion in class. It's been a wonderful journey reading it. We started it at the beginning and we're moving forward. You can jump on board if you're new to the group. And please share this channel, Prabhupada Disciples, Prabhupada TV channel. We have all the classes there are recorded and you can go back to them and for your information, and you can share them with others. And we have Prabhupada Disciples Association on Facebook. We are moving to, how many members do we have now there, Venkat?
I think 5,700. And we're getting, I think, around 1,100 members a week.
1,100. So there is specifically in that media, there's a lot of interest in finding out about what we have to say as an alternative to other groups that are preaching different philosophies, as we discussed today in the Bhagavatam, becoming tainted like a milk touched by the lips of a serpent. So we'll go to the kirtan, Prabhupada kirtan from the 60s, and then we'll offer obeisances and carry on with our days and nights and mornings worldwide. All glories to Śrīla Prabhupāda.
Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama,
Hare. Let us offer a respectful obeisance.
Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Jaya Pandit, Hari Bol. Glories to Prabhupada. Good to see you, brother.